David Smith here with one more Flip Classroom math video. 3 tips before we start. First, you can increase or decrease the playback speed if that helps you get through the video. Second, you can pause the video at any time to catch up with your notes. Third, you can turn on the captions or watch my words go by on the bottom of your screen. Cumulative frequency is just basically you're summing up the frequencies up to a certain value. Okay, so that's my definition there. Probably doesn't click super well yet, but let's do one and then you'll see how it works. So a cumulative frequency table looks just like a frequency table, but it has another column, and that's the cumulative frequency column. So I started here with some data, like we always do, and here we got castle visitors. So, and it's a frequency table. So to our castle, we have between 0 and 50 visitors, 16 different days. Okay? And then we have between 50 and 100 visitors, 38 different days, and so on. So these are the frequencies of the classes, and the classes are defined as number of visitors to the castle on that day. Okay, so cumulative frequency is just adding up all these individual frequencies as you go. So for our first class, the cumulative frequency is just 16 because that's as much as we have. But then for the next frequency, we're going to add the 16 and the 38, and that's going to give us 4854. Now squeeze that in there. Okay, and then the next frequency is just going to be the total from the previous row, from the previous 2 classes, adding that one. So this is going to be 54 plus 50, which is 104. So now what I want you to do is go ahead and pause the video and finish out your table. Go ahead and finish out the cumulative frequencies. All right, so go ahead and check your work. I just did my cumulative frequency there, and I had 200. And that's true, we do have 200 days in our data set. So if you didn't get 200, check your addition there and make sure that you got that right. All right, so now let's make a cumulative frequency curve of our data from our table. So first off, make sure you scale your axes correctly. In these diagrams, we're going to graph the number of visitors. This is our data on the x-axis. So that's these classes are going to be graphed on here. And notice how I've scaled my axis so that it goes up to 400 because that's the top end of our biggest or of our last class. So all that data is going to be graphed between 0 and 400. And then on my vertical axis, I've graphed my cumulative frequency. So our biggest frequency is 200. We have a bunch of days where we had 200 visitors to the castle. So there are my axes scaled correctly, all ready for the graph. Okay, so now we need to figure out our points, the points that go on our graph. And so the first thing you just need to remember is your first point is going to be 0, 0. Okay? Now, the second point is going to take this high member, the higher member of your first class, and the cumulative frequency for that class. So our second point is going to be 50, 16. So that means we had 0 to 50 visitors on 16 different days. Okay, so that's basically just our first class. But now we're going to start taking our cumulative frequency. So the next data point is 100. So that's the high member of this frequency, or of this class. And then now we take the cumulative frequency for that, and we do 54. And so we keep going in this same way. We're going to now take the highest value of the next class, which is this one here, which is 150, and then we go to our cumulative frequency of 104. So go ahead and pause the video and finish creating your points. All right, to summarize that point, your first one is 0, 0. Then you take the high end of each class along with its cumulative frequency, and that generates all of your points. So check your work, make sure you got these points. If you didn't, take a look at it, figure out what went wrong. And now what we're going to do is we're going to make a graph with this, okay? So actually, you probably have the skills right now just to graph all these data points on your cumulative frequency diagram. So go ahead and pause the video and do that. All right, let's see how you did. I carefully plotted my points on my graph. By the way, if you've got graph paper, bust it out for these problems because it's going to be super, super helpful. I'm just estimating where my points go. I think I did an okay job, but with graph paper, you can be fairly precise. Works pretty good. Okay, so here's my cumulative frequency diagram. I connected up my lines, and I've got my cumulative frequency. So now I can read off of this graph, and in our next lesson, we're going to do a bunch of different things using these graphs. We're going to be able to tell our median, our quartiles. We're going to be able to calculate our interquartile range. We're going to be able to analyze whether or not we have outliers. There's going to be a bunch of stuff we can do based on this cumulative frequency graph. All right, let's do a second one. A little bit less data, won't take you quite so long. We're going to do the same process that we did with the last one. So if you want to pause the video right now and use your notes and work this data to get your cumulative frequencies, figure out what your plot's going to look like, figure out your data points that go on the plot, and then make your plot. So if you want to do it all soup to nuts, as we say, pause the video right now and test yourself. I'm going to go through the steps of that one at a time. So first step, fill in your cumulative frequency. So pause the video and do that. All right, there are our cumulative frequencies. Now I want you to pause the video. First, check your work, make sure you got them. And if you have an error, find that. Now I want you to pause the video and create your axes for your cumulative frequency curve. Okay, so here we go. I've got my laps in here. So these are my classes of laps, 0 to 10, 10 to 20, and so on and so forth. So here are my classes, laps. And then here is my cumulative frequency. So we're going to do cumulative frequency right there. Now I want you to figure out your data points. And well, I'm going to make mine right there. So go ahead and look at your table, figure out what your data points are going to be, and then come back. Okay, so here we go. Our 0, 0. And then we have 10, 2. That means we have total frequency at class 10 is just 2. And then when we get to the class that ends in 20, you have a total of 26. Just going right off my table. Check your work. Make sure you got them. And if you're good to go, now I want you to pause the video and make your graph. So here we go. There is my cumulative frequency graph based on these data, based on that table, which is based on the actual data. So we can actually use these curves to find some of the values we've been hunting for a long time now by using the curve on the graph. So you might recognize this is the graph that we developed a couple lessons ago. So now we're going to use that to figure some things out about our data. Okay, so first one, median. That's pretty easy to get from our curve because the median is the middle value, right? So that's halfway through. We have 200 values total because that's our cumulative total of frequencies. So the median is the middle, so that's going to be at 100. So we can read that right off the graph. We can just go shooting right over, and then down, 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 and that's 127 approximately. So our median is approximately 127. So we got that right off the curve. So you might see some problems in your textbook that just give you a curve, and they're going to ask you to figure out what the median is. All right, so now let's figure out a few other things that we're used to looking up. The lower and the upper quartile. These are pretty easily gotten right from the graph, just like we did the median. The lower quartile occurs in the middle of the first half of the data. So for our data, here's the first half. So the middle is just going to be the 50. So we're going to go right across here, dot, 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 and then down. And this is 77. So that's quartile 1. Now, pardon my graph. It's not super, super accurate. So I know from my note copy, it's pretty good that ends up being, you read that right down there at 77. So we're going to put approximately 77. And you remember why these are approximate and not exact. I mean, the graph automatically makes it approximate just because we're reading off of a graph. But there's another reason for why they're approximate. Remember, our data points for our classes of visits we use a midpoint for that. So we don't actually use the actual data. We're creating a frequency table based on making a midpoint. So that's why these are always going to be approximations. Okay, let's do the upper quartile. Actually, I'm going to say pause the video, use your graph, and find the upper quartile. All right, when I read it off the graph, I get 207 for my upper quartile. Let's take a look at the graph. Now the middle of the second half is the middle of 100 to 200 in our frequencies. So we go across on the 50 and we zip on down, and I get approximately 207 for that one. All right, let's take a look at a percentile. This one is going to ask us to find the 90th percentile. So let's talk about what a percentile means first, and then we'll do it on the graph. So the 90th percentile is going to be the number of visitors that includes 90% of our data. Okay, so that's the number at which we've received 90% of our data. So in our case here, it's going to happen at 180 because we go all the way to 200. So 180 is 90% of the way to 200. So I'm going to go ahead and trace that on the graph, and we'll read it right there. All right, so I traced that off on my graph here. I'm going from the 180, which is 90% of 200, go horizontally across and then down, and I get approximately 277. So that's our 90th percentile. So what that means is that 277 visitors per day, that when you get up to that mark, you've encompassed 90% of all of your data. All right, let's do this one more time for good practice. So here I've got another cumulative frequency diagram with winds as my data point, and the frequency here is up to 40. And what I want you to do now is find, using the graph, find your median, your lower quartile, your Q1, your upper quartile, your Q3, and let's find that 90th percentile again. So go ahead, you probably want to copy this into your notes, and then go ahead and see if you can draw those quartiles on there and the median and the 90th percentile and figure out what they are. All right, so my median is going to occur at the halfway point. So that's at 20 in my frequencies. And I just shoot that straight across and I come on down. And on my graph, I get about 11.3 for my median. So we can go ahead and put that there. Now go ahead and do the quartiles. Do the lower quartile and the upper quartile. Okay, I traced my lines. My lower quartile comes halfway between the halfway, the median, and the 0. So that's at 10 for my cumulative frequency. I zip across, come down. On my graph, I get about 7.2 is what I put there. And then my upper quartile, or my Q3, again, now I'm halfway between the second half of the data. So that's at my 30 cumulative frequency. Drop on down to my graph, and I get about 14.2. Again, about as accurate as I can do with my hand graph. And I got 14.2. Okay, pause the video and trace out your 90th percentile. Okay, let's take a look at how you did on that. Now this is a little bit more tricky. Where is the 90th percentile? Right? I mean, the other one was pretty easy because we went all the way up to 200. So 90 percentile is just going to be 180 on that. It's pretty simple. But this one, 40 is 100%. So what I did here is a pretty simple calculation. I just did 40 times 0.9. 0.9 is 90%. So 0.9 times 40 gives me 36. So that tells me that my 90th percentile occurs at my cumulative frequency of 36. So then I just traced across with that one, and I got my 90th percentile of 17.7, which I put right there. Now that you've watched the video, take a moment to jot down any remaining questions so you can bring them to our next class. Remember, you can also come back to this video again and watch it for deeper understanding. If you liked or enjoyed the video, please click like or subscribe down below.